Welcome to the Inconceivably Connected Podcast. I'm your host and fellow donor-conceived person, Nick Ludwig. You're listening to episode 4, and this week I'll be speaking with Iliana, a young woman from the state of Maryland, who happens to be the first egg donor-conceived guest of the show. My conversation with Iliana was one that mostly had me in the listener's position, and I think that's a good thing. My job in these episodes is to steer these stories through lines of questioning. And when I don't have to do that too much, it usually means our storytellers are embodying what it means to be truly, fully, and fearlessly vulnerable. That's what the aim of this show is, after all. Iliana's DCP journey has been one that deeply rattled her for a significant amount of time, and there's still some loose ends that haven't come together as it stands today. However, where she's found herself now versus where her story began is night and day. And her growth along the way felt abundantly clear to me even in just the 1 hour or so of speaking with her. I'll let Iliana take it from here, and I have a feeling you'll really enjoy this one. Here we go.
Hello everyone, my name is Iliana. I'm from the Baltimore area in Maryland, and I recently turned 22 years old in February, and I am a donor-conceived person, and I didn't officially know that I was a donor-conceived person until my 21st birthday. That was like when it was officially confirmed. But a little bit about me. I'm a college student. I'm a senior, so I'm in my 4th year, and I'm currently anticipating a year of graduate school. So there's lots of exciting things going on for me right now. But the entirety of my journey of how I discovered that I was donor conceived took place while I was in college. So in the last 3 years, and it completely altered my sense of self. It changed the way that I see everything, obviously the way that I see myself, but my family and just everything about life and who I am and my identity. It was just taken from the inside and ripped out. Like everything that I thought I knew just seemed like it was a lie, and I felt as though, how can I trust? How can I trust when I couldn't even trust my parents? So I didn't have really any suspicion. I don't think that's something people typically suspect. Is that, did my parents use a donor in conceiving me, so I am only biologically related to one of my parents? That thought never ever crossed my mind. And I also have a twin brother who is obviously not speaking on this, but he is also donor conceived and from the same donor. He didn't get into this and have as much of a process with it as I did. I was the one who ended up telling him in the last year, which was a choice that I made to tell him. But anyways, I was 18 years old at the time. And it's interesting because I remember wanting to do a DNA test for a while, but it wasn't like I had really specific reasons why. I just kind of wanted to see that the ancestry that my parents have always said is their heritage and whatnot, which it definitely would have been, because the family history did not go too far back. My mother's parents immigrated in the 1920s, the early 20th century, and same with my dad's parents. So it wasn't really a question of where they came from. I would just be seeing essentially a confirmation of that. But I don't know. I thought 23andMe was cool. They do um, all their marketing, and it works. It definitely does. Um, and I didn't have even a semblance of the thought of I might not be biologically related to my own mother. My mom, my own mom, who was the only mom that I ever knew, and like the person I loved more than anyone in the world. Um, and I did not see that coming. But anyways, it was my freshman year of college. I bought a 23andMe test. I got it over winter break, and I didn't keep it a secret. I didn't mean to keep it a secret from my parents. I honestly thought that they knew about it. I thought that they knew about it at the time that I took the test. They later claimed that they didn't remember seeing me do it, but it was not something I tried to keep a secret at all. I did it out in the open in my house, spit in the tube and everything. Um, and then I didn't get the test results back until I was back at school by myself, or not with my family. And it was January 2022. It was 3 years ago. Because I was a freshman. That's crazy, actually. So I opened the 23andMe results, and I remember I was in my freshman dorm room, and I was by myself, and I immediately saw that it was not what I expected at all. In terms of within 1 second, I could clearly see that the ancestry I knew to be my father's was definitely on there. And then what I knew to be my mom's heritage, it was at the time 0.2%. And they have since updated it to 1%. Eastern European. My mom, I knew this growing up because my grandma, her first language is Polish, and my grandpa, his parents were Hungarian or of Hungarian descent. And so, as far as I knew growing up, my mom was fully Eastern European. And this was like culture that I knew about, and I like learned some Polish when I was young, and I didn't have any reason to believe that it wasn't actually a part of my identity and my heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got this test back. It has German. My dad's mom was, her parents were German immigrants before World War II, illegally. But her father fought in World War I as well in Germany. And so it was like very obvious to me that that was correct. And then there was just like this weird like other stuff that I didn't have any clue about, which was kind of could be it's like countries that are very close to Germany. So it was like the Netherlands and Belgium that I didn't know to be a part of my family's history. And then there was also like British and Irish, which I knew was also on my dad's side, but the percentages were way off, and I was 60% German and Dutch, which didn't make any sense, because that's not what I grew up knowing. But that wasn't the worst of it at all. And I hadn't seen it all yet. I just had looked at the first section at this point, and I was already feeling extremely confused. I remember seeing the turn on relative share or relative sharing, something like that. And I remember being like, should I even do this? Like, maybe I really shouldn't do this. And I remember considering that, but then I did it anyway. it matched me with a stranger as my grandfather, a man whose name I had never heard before, and it wasn't a very distinctive name either. It wasn't someone that because I tried, it wasn't someone that I could find on the internet the identity of. I was extremely, extremely confused because I knew my grandparents. I knew my mom's parents. I knew my grandmother before she passed, and I didn't know my dad's father, but it's like I knew that this wasn't his name and this wasn't him. It was pretty obvious. And I frantically started typing emails to the 23andMe headquarters or something, and I was saying, just rambling on, I was saying, I think you made a mistake, I think you messed up my result, because this is how much I trusted my parents, is I didn't even think that that there was a possibility, because I trusted them. I didn't have a reason to believe that I wasn't their kid biologically, so I fully unleashed Karen mode on 23andMe. I was saying that they messed up my results, that this isn't right, that I have a grandfather match that I've never heard of, and that doesn't make any sense because I think you would know your grandfather, and blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. They get back to me pretty quickly, I think, and they were saying just the typical 23andMe, we know, or the corporate speak, we know that our technology is as advanced or as accurate as it could possibly be. Even though there are limitations to it, it is extremely, extremely unlikely that it would match you, or that it would, I don't know, indicate someone who is not your grandfather as your grandfather, or someone that's that closely related to you. They just don't mess up matches like that. It's really not possible, or at least that's what they hold to be true. And so at that point, I really didn't have any ground to stand on. I had a very, very difficult time. This was a time that was some of the worst weeks of my life, because there was 2 weeks after that I was just in a state of total confusion and despair, because I was going through all of the possibilities in my mind, and I honestly wasn't even thinking about donor conception as a possibility. I was thinking that the fertility clinic, because I know that my parents went to a special place. I didn't know what it was called, but I knew that my mom had trouble. My mom had endometriosis, but I knew that there's women that have endometriosis that still have healthy pregnancies and give birth, so I didn't think that meant anything. But I thought at the time that the fertility clinic screwed up and put the wrong egg with the right sperm, and that my life was essentially this failed science experiment that was this twisted, sick joke. It was like a joke that was played on me, that I was not meant to exist. I wasn't meant to be here. And the way that I came into this world was like a freak accident. It was all of these things that I was thinking that were horrible, horrible. Just remembering it is it makes me sad for myself, because it's just terrible stuff, feeling like I don't belong in the world, terrible things. But I just really didn't know what to believe, and that was what my brain clung to, is I was an accident in the biggest way possible, because I was thinking, if my parents knew about this, surely they would have told me. And I remember crying on the phone to my mom at night, and I wasn't friends with my roommate, and I didn't have a good support system because I didn't have a lot of friends at the time. But I was on the phone with her, and I was just crying, and I couldn't stop, and it went on like this for 2 weeks. But for some reason, it's not like I never even felt like it was an option that I could talk to my parents about this, because even the possibility that they didn't know about this would mean that I would be telling them for the first time that I wasn't my mom's biological kid, which was obviously not the case, but that's what I thought was definitely a possibility.
Right.
I was maybe clueless, but that's what I thought. And so I was like crying on the phone to my mom, and she's trying to figure out like what's really wrong, because it's like I'm framing it as it's just issues with my roommate and like typical college stuff, and it really wasn't, but I really didn't know what else to say to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that, just time kind of went on. I found ways to distract myself from thinking about it, because it was just an area of total uncertainty. I didn't know what happened, and I also realized that I probably was never going to know. So I was only 18 at the time, and then I turned 19 shortly thereafter. But I, for some reason, believed that I would just hold on to this secret for the rest of my life, and I kind of just thought that that's what I would do. So I picked up, and I already had some bad coping mechanisms from before this, but it kind of did prompt my mental health to get worse, and I picked up like more bad coping mechanisms, just trying to distract, not anything like super crazy, but I was just trying to distract myself from the reality that I took this DNA test that I regretted it. That was another thing, is I was like, damn, if I just didn't take this test, then I wouldn't know any of this, and I could go over the rest of my life not knowing. But I took it, so I changed everything, right?
And at this point, were you aware that you were donor conceived, or it was still that whole aspect was still not top of mind, or not within your awareness?
So it was not in my awareness at all. It was totally up in the air at this point, and for the next couple years, I just distracted myself from it. I tried not to think about it. Every once in a while, I would go back on 23andMe, and I would check it and just see that it was the same. I turned off the relative sharing for a long time, but I remember there were at least a couple times that I would go back and check. I don't know why, but I just felt compelled. And when I was a junior in college, I was 20. This was the fall. This was November of 2023. I just by coincidence checked the 23andMe one day, and I saw that in addition to the stranger that was apparently my grandfather, I now had a new half-sibling match, which was pretty crazy. I forgot to say this before, but I did at the time, like 3 years ago, I sent messages to the grandfather match, being really confused and saying that I think that they messed up my results because, I don't know who you are, right? But I never got a response back, which I think is actually pretty normal with 23andMe. people just won't respond even if they are alive. What I didn't know at the time was that this man was no longer alive. So he seriously couldn't respond to me. But sorry, I just went off track a little bit, but I forgot to say that. I saw a half-sibling match just suddenly one day, and it was a half-sister. And I think it said that she was born in 2002, which she was born in December, so is 2 months, between 2 and 3 months older than me, very close in age. And it said that she was from New York, which is where my parents went to get fertility treatments or whatever I thought they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
I remember this changed my thinking a lot because if I have a half sibling, it's either obviously the kid of whoever, they accidentally put in my sample or whatever, or I'm donor conceived. And this was when I really started thinking about, oh, that actually makes a lot more sense than what I originally thought. And it's also not as horrible of a reality, which is good. But I started putting the pieces together just from like the realization that I have a half sibling out there. I realized, this must have been from a donor, most likely. And then I had a really, really tough time for a few months. It was just a few months, but at the time I didn't know that I had OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. I didn't know that I had such a huge problem with uncertainty, and that this was actually making the whole timeline more and more difficult because I already have a huge problem with uncertainty. It's something that causes me a lot of distress, and so this was something that started when I was a kid, when I was starting puberty, but I didn't know that I actually met the criteria. I didn't know that I actually had OCD, and it's just a thing that people joke about all the time. So it got worse and worse over the years. It got worse during the time that I'm in college, that I've been in college, until I finally was diagnosed, and it also changed my life a little bit. But having that serious problem, like at my core with uncertainty, made this so much harder because I now know that I have a biological parent, a biological mother, which I think is different because I am a young woman, and I think if it was a biological father, I would view it a little bit differently because as a girl, you definitely see your mom more in yourself than your dad, just like naturally, I think in most cases. And I was always like looking for things in my mom that I could see in myself, and just not really finding that, because we do have some similarities, but not, as much as would be normal, as would be typical. And so I'm just going off topic the slightest bit, I realize, but I did some things to try to be more like her when I was growing up. I dyed my hair darker. My brother and I were like blonde little kids, and both my parents have dark brown hair. So it was like we didn't even look like we fit into their family growing up, but I dyed my hair darker. This summer, it was May after my freshman year of college, and it was like almost black. And this was like obviously right when I first found this out. I just wanted to look more like my mom. That was what it was about. I tried to dye my own hair like shortly after this. I first got the test back. Like I was going through it, but it looked terrible on me because I'm not supposed to have almost black hair. It's just my donor has like light brown, like definitely was blonde for a lot of her life. So like lighter hair. And I didn't understand why not only do I not look like my mom, but I also don't have her personality traits, or I don't have most of them. Um, Anyways, going back to where we are in the timeline, I was absolutely driven insane by the amount of uncertainty and stress that this caused me, because I knew, and I don't think that everyone's experience is different, and it would totally be normal for it to not bother other people this much, but for me, I think a lot of why it bothered me so much was the OCD and the fact that my brain just wouldn't let it go. It wouldn't let it go for even one moment. And I was in a relationship at the time that ended up failing miserably. I was just, in summary, I was broken up with because I was so obsessed with this and with discovering who my biological parent, my biological mother was, that I was so caught up in that I was completely living life in my own head. I was neglecting my relationship. I was neglecting like self-care. Wasn't really hanging out with friends. I mean, my mental health was just getting worse and worse. I've had issues with disordered eating since I was a teenager that was also bad at this time. And this, it was just like a perfect storm. But thankfully, not very many months went by where I lived like this. And I know that if it was the rest of my life that I was gonna not know who they were, I would have ended up being okay with that. I would have accepted it and would have been able to continue on with my life. But it would have been extremely difficult. It would have been extremely difficult because I felt like I didn't know who I was at all. And there were a lot of reasons for that don't have to do with just being donor conceived, but being donor conceived on top of like what I was already dealing with that I didn't know I was dealing with was so complicated. And anyways, just a few months went by. So we go from November to February.
And if I could pause you quickly, just to be clear on this aspect, up until this point, your twin, is not involved in any of this, nor are your parents. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So you were doing this on your own. Okay.
And I mean, I'll just mention this briefly. When I would come home for like summer break and like the breaks and everything, there was this like, it was anger that was bubbling beneath the surface. And I guess it was about 2 years that went by, I just kind of kept it under wraps, even though I was starting to feel like there's definitely something that they didn't tell me. And obviously I understand, in part the reasons why they wouldn't want to tell me, but that doesn't make it right. And that doesn't make it okay. But at the same time, once I put together that I was donor conceived, I refused to beg my parents to treat me like an equal. I refused to beg them to apologize to me and tell me the truth, because to me, my brain wouldn't let me do it. It saw that as the most humiliating thing in the world. And it was like I didn't even consider asking about it and going through that at the time because I just thought that it was humiliating and for all parties involved. But anyways, skip to February of 2024. This was just a year ago. I'm obviously like still, it was a year ago, but I'm still processing things. That's one thing I think people don't understand is this stuff takes a very, very long time to process, I would say. But um, this is kind of an interesting story, but I didn't really handwrite anything at this time, or not much, like stuff for school. Like I was mostly just typing stuff on my computer. And for some reason, this one night in February, it was about a week before my birthday, and my mental health was pretty much at an all-time low. It was shortly before my 21st birthday, a time that's supposed to be super fun in your life, and I was miserable, and I was, you know, just there were times that I would look in the mirror and just start crying, um, because I didn't like what I saw, and I already didn't have great self-esteem. So then it's like, I didn't have great self-esteem, but then I also am feeling like there's a stranger in my own face. And I wrote this like weird dark poetry that was like, it was like about the stranger in the mirror, and it was like this twisted story where I'm like, it I don't know. I guess I'll just summarize. It was really stupid, but I was like staring at myself in the mirror, and I see like this stranger looking back at me, and I'm like terrified because like I don't know who this person is. They're staring at me. And so it was like I suddenly I can't take it any this is like in the writing that I did. I can't take it anymore. I punch the mirror and I shatter it, and glass goes everywhere, and there's like these shards of glass all over the floor, and they're like cutting into my skin, and um I just like look down, and like obviously like my eye lands on like a shard of glass, reflects my face back to me, so I literally can't escape. And then it was like this horrible thing where like I am like using the glass to like, I don't know. It was a horrible story. It was like I I was being dramatic in hindsight, but I also feel so bad for my younger self. Not that much younger, but I feel so bad that I had to feel like there was a stranger inside, like within me. And I'm sure that I'm not the only donor conceived person to feel that way, especially for the time that I didn't know my donor. Um, I basically was like doing this writing in by hand. For the first time, I started writing this like dark, depressing shit, and like about the stranger in the mirror, etc., etc. And I now see me like handwriting that when I never hand wrote stuff because I didn't have the patience to. It was like a cry for help because that's how I view it now, because I was actually putting pen to paper and like producing something that was like tangible, physical, because it was and I know this because I dated the top of the page, February 19th. It was the same exact day as I wrote that stuff down. My donor contacted me for the first time on 23andMe through her father's account.
Wow.
I saw them, yeah, and I didn't even realize that it was the same day until like a few months later. I realized it was the same exact day, and I was like, that is so strange. Just because I like had something I wrote and dated. But anyway, I I couldn't sleep it was the night before my 21st birthday, which February 26th. It was so it was a week later after, because I didn't check the 23andMe all the time. But it was only a week after she sent this message. I don't know what struck me, if it was because it was my birthday or what, but I could not sleep. It was probably like 4 in the morning or 3 in the morning. Like, I just could not get myself to sleep. For some reason, I felt compelled to check 23andMe, and I did, and I immediately saw this message, and I think, here, wait, I have it in my camera roll, and I'll be able to find it pretty quickly, I think. I'm gonna read it out.
It sounds like something was cosmically aligned there for your donor to have reached out on the same day that you're deciding
Yeah,
to write something by hand. I don't know what that means, but it feels like there's something there.
it was crazy. It was crazy when I realized that like it was the same day, and exactly a week later, I saw this. This is what it said. Hi, Iliana. I'm so, so, so sorry that I'm only writing to you now. This is my dad's account, and sadly he died last June. I just happened to be checking his email inbox today, and I saw your old message. Luckily, we have all of Dad's passwords, so I logged into his 23andMe account to send you a reply. I think I am your biological mother. I was an egg donor in 2002 when I was living in New York. It seems like maybe your parents have never mentioned using a donor, so this must come as quite a shock to you. I'm so sorry that you have found this out in this way, but I would be happy to talk to you and tell you anything you would like to know about me or my family. I was born and raised in Canada, then moved to New York City when I was 24. I lived in New York City off and on from 2001 to 2019, but currently I am in London. My husband is English, but we might move back to New York City someday. My name, or I shouldn't say her name. Blah blah. She says her name, and then she gives me her email, and she said, "I look forward to hearing from you." Smiley face. So that was insane to receive, obviously.
So what were
Um,
you feeling when, and I'm sure you'll get into this, what were you feeling when you got that message? Was there relief? Was there more curiosity? Like what was coming up?
Definitely curiosity, because I had no foresight. I didn't think that this was ever going to happen to me. Um, I wanted to know about her. I wanted to know all about her, and I was just like, oh my, I like couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that this was actually happening. And before I was even able to email her, which I then saw that it was like the same, or never mind, I said that wrong, but I like Googled her name, and it's like not a very complicated name, but I like looked at all these pictures of these women, went through like so many just that night, like didn't sleep. And I found her picture, and I just like knew that it was her. And because I just like knew when I found it that it was. And because like obviously there were a lot of women with the same name. And then that ended up being the same picture as the one that was on her Gmail account. I was like, oh, I found her. But it was just, it was surreal. It was surreal. I, I mean, this was like borderline. I've had some experiences like this in my life. It was borderline a hypomanic episode. Genuinely, I I was like, I didn't realize at the time that the OCD controlled my mood so much, but it did. And so if something like that I was obsessed with ended up like going well, or like working out, or like I ended up discovering something or figuring out some uncertainty, this was the ultimate solved uncertainty. And I was like on cloud nine. I was like, I remember I was so happy. And on my birthday, like I wrote her out this like whole long email, and like it was wow. But it's been over a year. It's been 13 months since then, and we've exchanged many, many emails. I've also contacted and been in infrequent contact with my half sister, who also has a brother, so that makes there at least 4 of us. And my donor also has 2 sons, 6, but it adds up really fast, yeah.
And does your half sister, is her brother also a twin, or no?
Yeah, they're twins like me and my brother, yeah. It's crazy. So we obviously found a lot of similarities. It's funny, I loved creative writing since I was like a kid, and I would write like little storybooks at my elementary school. One of my teachers like put one of my books in the library because she thought it was so good, and I like wrote the whole thing and illustrated it, and it was just something that I was known for at my elementary school specifically, because there weren't really any other kids that were like doing it that much. And I went on to like I still love it now. And my donor, she went to college to study creative writing, but she she ended up dropping out of college because she had undiagnosed ADHD. I also had undiagnosed ADHD unbeknownst to myself. And this was actually one of the first things I learned about her. And I immediately was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Because I was like, I definitely have it too.
Yeah.
And so that started this whole process where I was like, I should like get tested and diagnosed with this thing I didn't know I had. Because no one in my parents don't have ADHD. I, in a lot of ways, felt like I didn't fit in with my family, and that was part of the reason why. It's a different neurotype, and this podcast episode probably makes it extremely obvious because I feel like I'm all over the place, but I'm really like, this is me trying, so you know that if I wasn't trying, it would be much, much worse.
You're doing a great job.
But anyways, so I inherited that from her, and that was like a crazy thing to talk about because she told me all about like how she struggled so bad in her young life but didn't know why. And she didn't know that she had ADHD until her sons were decently young, pretty young, and they were getting diagnosed with it, and it made her realize that she had it herself. But luckily, I was able to get my diagnosis in college, instead of at 40 something. It's a little better that way. Because I was really, really struggling with school, and I mean, there were a lot of reasons for that. Like, I am a perfectionist. I generally get good grades, but struggle as in the procrastination's horrible, time management horrible. I pull all-nighters. Like, it was like that. It was like terrible lifestyle caused by ADHD, like not eating enough, not sleeping enough, all that. And if that continued on in my life for like years and years more, I would probably be a shell of a human being. And I mean, there's a lot of women that go undiagnosed with ADHD. This is totally a sidebar, but it can uproot your life if you don't know that you have something. And so we connected over that. We connected over our shared love for creative writing, and also just like general like creative stuff, like artistic stuff. Like, I grew up doing art, and my parents like were not creative types really, so that was like the whole thing for them, and they really like took me to all the art classes that I wanted and everything. And yeah, there were a lot of things that we kind of bonded over. There's just like so many thoughts right at once.
Yeah, and then when you discover that the nature side carries significant weight, it's almost like, and I assume, well, you tell me what the feeling was like, but when you look in the mirror the next time, it's like, oh, there's not so much of a stranger in the mirror anymore. Like, I kind of have some answers now.
Yeah, and since we've been exchanging emails for a year now, and I really like doing it. I like updating her on my life, and I hope that she feels the same way. We obviously haven't met in real life, um, but I want to someday, and I don't know when that will be. I have no idea, and it's I wouldn't. I most likely would be keeping it a secret. That's neither here nor there. Um, I guess me saying it on here, it's not a secret, but um,
Well,
either way.
on the note of secrets, is this, and I assume you were approaching this part of the story, but is this something that your parents are now aware of? That you know all of this and that you've had this correspondence with your biological mother? How does that look these days?
Yes, I'm sorry if this was long-winded. But I I did this impulsively. It was over the summer in June. I was alone with my brother, and I had been in contact with my donor for like a couple months, and so it was on my mind a lot, and I just couldn't. I felt that it was wrong for him to not know the truth, and I regretted it as soon as I did it, but I impulsively told him that all of this, like that I found out that we were donor conceived and that I'm in contact with her and blah, blah, blah. He did not believe me. And by that I mean he absolutely did not believe me. He thought that I was either crazy, like or I shouldn't say that word, but like he thought that I had like lost my mind, or I was like trying to trick him or something, which I was not. So what was inevitably going to happen ended up happening, which he went right to my parents. And so my parents, ironically, because I had struggled with this for 3 years prior, my parents ended up telling him first, and they told him probably about 2 days before they actually came to have the conversation with me. But so that like blew up. And yeah, I mean, it was a whole blow up because of course it was. And I was angry and I was upset, and my parents were upset. And my dad said that it might have been the worst mistake or the biggest mistake he's made in his life was not telling us. I don't know. It was a lot. It was really a lot. But I also needed to hear it from them way more than I realized, because I feel like I could not actually start healing from the experience until I got, at the very least, their apologies, which I did get. And it's like I do understand like why they did what they did, but I think there needs to be a lot done for parents who kind of seek donor conception in terms of education. And I think there should be like a standardized education for parents about like how to talk to their kid about this, or like what age to tell them, or like just how to go about it. And I think that would have helped a lot. I know my parents were definitely not given anything like that. And my donor was also only given the option of anonymous donorship, so she was completely anonymous and was given no choice otherwise. And I personally don't think that that's ethical. And I also believe that a really amazing thing for donor conceived people, or I think I'm sure not everyone agrees with this, but that there's people who brought up, well, what if the donor conceived person, when they like turn 18 or something like that, the information, like the basic information of their donors, then released to them, like when they're an adult. I think that is like probably one of the best like policy ideas that I've seen, because I think that could solve a lot of issues, because then parents couldn't keep this a secret, because you would at 18 be receiving this as like medical records, because in a sense you do deserve rights to like half of your biological like medical heritage. Like I don't like that is just something that's ignored
Yep.
for donor conceived people, and I find that so strange. There is just, I mean, there's like so much that you could get into about it.
And I guess I'm curious. Well, I'm curious about a lot of things. Once your parents validated the fact that you and your brother were donor conceived, what happened with your brother after that? Because, right, he didn't believe you when you first told him.
Yeah. So, my brother and I have had some issues with our relationship. Like, we were best friends when we were little kids, but as we grew up, we grew apart a little bit. And I know that happens to some siblings, especially like brothers and sisters sometimes. My hope was always that one day we will come back together and be close again. That's probably not going to happen, but I've thought, well, maybe when we have like families of our own, like we'll come back together like as adults, but I don't know. Either way, I'm not super close with my brother, so I really don't know the details of his like emotional reaction to this, which is a sad thing. I wish I did, but anyways, he expressed like not wanting to, or at least to my parents, not wanting to do a DNA test. So as far as I know, he hasn't done that. And as far as I know, he's not interested in contacting our donor, which is fine. And like I'm the one who did it, like, oh well. And they know that. So it is kind of a good thing that they know that in a sense, because I would feel the guilt like weighing on me over time if they didn't know that. But regardless, I really don't think that he was hit as hard by it as I was in a lot of ways. And that's because obviously in my case there was like a whole 3-year process of like figuring this out and being confused and hurt that he didn't really have to go through, because he didn't take a DNA test. And I'm sure that there's, some people might think that I did something wrong in telling him when maybe it wasn't my place. But I just, in the moment, it was like I couldn't stop myself. And I had started building this relationship with, I don't know if I guess I shouldn't say her name. I won't say her name. I keep like almost saying it. Had started like building this relationship with her in terms of like a friendly relationship. Like I know things about her and like her family, and I just felt increasingly like it was wrong to know all this and have all this to my knowledge, and to like withhold that from my brother. So I could see like a different version of reality where my brother was more interested in like contacting our donor, or at least because he might be in the future, but he's not now. So there's also that. But I didn't know how he was gonna react, so I just thought in my heart, or I felt in my heart that the right thing to do was to tell him. And I don't regret that anymore, because it ended up totally being things worked out. Because if I didn't hear from my parents their explanation, it was maybe a poor explanation, but it was still an explanation, and it was still an apology. And I needed that, I think, to move on. So I mean, if there's anyone out there who's going through something like this and they feel like they can't speak to their parents about it, because I totally understand that, because I felt like that was just an impossibility. Um, but looking back on it now, it's definitely not. You can talk to your parents, and what's crazy is even though it might be bad and it might blow up, it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be the end of the world. And families have big, big problems like this. And especially families who have like a bond with each other, most families do, they're able to move on from stuff like this. And it just takes time. It takes a lot of time to heal, because I know that this is very recent, like very recent for my family. Like, it's not like it's gonna need more time. And I know that my brother has been very quiet in terms of communicating with my parents, and it's only gotten worse in the last year. My mom will call him, and apparently sometimes he'll just like sit on the phone and like have almost nothing to say for the whole call. It's just, and so I feel bad for her, but she'll just like talk and talk, 'cause she doesn't want to go, but he doesn't have much to say, and that makes me sad. And I know that he already didn't have like a good relationship with my dad, and this didn't make it better. So I do feel like it's very much an imperfect situation, but it's something that I have faith that in the next couple years, a lot of healing will take place. And because I've had to work like a lot with like forgiving the anger that I felt toward my parents, because I was angry. And you can't hold on to anger that's that intense for a very long time, because it's really, really unhealthy, and it could destroy your life, honestly.
Yeah.
You have to start to forgive, because if you don't, then the anger has power over you. And I have also had to forgive my mom for another pretty big thing in my life. So it's, I have had like other experiences with forgiveness, and it is so very necessary to be able to move on. And there's a lot of different ways that I have been coping with this in a much more positive way recently. I've written poetry. There was one poem I wrote called The Donation that I really like. I've submitted it to something. Nothing came of that, but I really like poetry, so I've never done like a short story, but I would love to do stuff like that, to really like process the emotions even more thoroughly, is like getting them down on paper and like writing out a whole story or a book or whatever it might be.
Well, I like your approach in that you've taken something deeply impactful that's happened to you in your life and used it as fuel for something good. That to me indicates a healthy way of processing what can be a really challenging and sometimes traumatic thing. Quick question related to your parents. So now that you've had some time to allow the dust to settle a bit, and I know it's still relatively fresh, it's only about a year, but since things have calmed down a bit, how have you noticed your relationship with your parents affected? Has it changed in any notable ways?
So, it definitely has. I think I view it differently because I had this thought in the back of my mind of like either I was a mistake, like a weird mistake, or they are keeping a secret from me. And I had that in the back of my mind for a long time. So I already kind of started to see them differently just because of that. But in terms of like did the apology like take away the fact, like, it, how do I say this? Sorry. The apology didn't take away from the suffering that I experienced. And I also was like dealing with at the same time like mental illness that I didn't even know about and was making it worse. So pretty much like worst case scenario, like I was pretty much there. Like it was really bad. So their apology doesn't take away that pain. And I also know that they'll never be able to fully understand like how much it affected me, but it it gives me like an explanation, and it gives me like at least some solace, some comfort that like they aren't, my parents aren't bad people, not at all. My parents are good people. They didn't like they didn't intend for me to get hurt as badly as I did. There were ways that I could have saved myself from a world of hurt because I could have brought this up to them 3 years ago when I was a freshman. I could have asked about it, and then I would have been saved from a lot of spiraling and uncertainty. But I just was I had too much pride, or I didn't want to risk it. And so I ended up basically hurting myself more than they would have caused just by themselves. But I understand that my brother and I were a little bit on the difficult side. At least I guess that's what my mom would probably say. Or I'm paraphrasing what was said in their apology, but they were told apparently at the clinic that it was recommended to wait until the kids were in middle school or like around adolescence, which I thought is already kind of late. But either way, that's what they were told. And so according to them, they were planning on telling us when we were in middle school, but when time came around to it, we were a bit difficult, as a lot of middle schoolers are, and they, I think, got scared that it was not going to go over well, and so they just backed away from doing it. And then time goes on and it's too late. So I bet they probably felt like, well, now we can never do it. It's kind of funny.
Yeah.
But I think that is what ended up happening to them. Definitely is probably what happens to a lot of parents of donor conceived people. And it's like, it is understandable in a sense, because I mean, my mom told me that she imagined that like we would be having like a fight or something, and I would scream at her like, you're not even my real mom, like stuff like that, and that she like imagined that and how badly it would hurt her. And I totally get that like it is not black and white, because there is a lot that's hard about that. And you know, I wouldn't know how to feel in my mom's position, but I do know that for my parents, hearing how much I trusted them and how much I love my mom, and you know, I'm not just like going on this podcast to talk shit about them, because yeah, they did make a mistake, but I do love my parents, and it's like I always wanted to be more like my mom, and I was like always confused about, you know, why aren't I more like her? And you know, if I had just had an explanation, and you know, I think it would have definitely been hard for me to take at first, but I would have really, really respected the fact that at least my parents told me. And so then I know the truth. And it's not something that I discovered on my own and got myself really hurt in the process. And it's just, I think there's like so many variables involved in my case. And I'm sure for a donor conceived person who had like very good self-esteem and like was like on top of life, like things would be different. But for me, it's like I already had these issues with not fitting in, with low self-esteem, and then this was thrown on top of it, and I just felt like I lost my sense of self completely, completely.
I think a lot of us in the donor conceived community have those questions where it's like, am I like, where are the similarities between me and my dad or my mom? Like, and for me, there were definitely times in my life where I struggled to see the connection to my dad. We're very different in some key ways. Not to the point where I seriously questioned anything, but I'm curious, in your case, did you have any sort of intuitive feelings before any of this came to light where you thought to yourself, wait, maybe there could be more to the story here that I'm not aware of?
It's funny, I have thought about that before because I did take a DNA test at 18 years old, and not every 18-year-old wants to take a DNA test. And I think there was kind of at a subconscious level, some sort of intuition. And I have one, or there's a couple, well, it's like they're not even important. One specific memory I have is I was looking at a family photo when I was probably in high school, middle school or high school, and I was just like looking at it, and I noticed how like my brother and I, like our like overall like heads, like just the shape and size of our heads is like quite a bit bigger than like both of my parents, like like wider.
Yeah.
And so it's like our heads are literally wider. And I noticed too, like my brother has curly hair. I have wavy hair. Both my parents have straight or like mostly straight hair. So it was just like I knew these things, but I was looking at this picture and I was like, that's weird, like that we would both have the same differences from our parents, right? I remember thinking that. But not like going further than that. There was never like a step further, but there was definitely like an intuition, I guess, that was kind of like, this doesn't make sense. And I have also read about, I don't know if you've heard about, it's called genetic mirroring.
Okay.
Which is like, basically, because for most people, they're raised by their biological parents or their biological mother. So it's like when they're like a small child or whatever, and they are looking at their mother's face, like they're seeing kind of a reflection of like, it's like genetic mirroring. So it's like they obviously inherited genes from their mom. So they're seeing like part of themselves, I guess, is the idea, and that's like beneficial for human development. I don't know. I don't know the details of it, but I know that like there's so many good things about like being able to adopt children, and I've always just viewed donor conception very differently. Very differently. I have had issues with feeling like, obviously I talked about this, a failed science experiment, and just I know a lot of people in the DCP community feel like they're science experiments in general, and it is this like really weird, like visceral feeling of also the realization of like, so like I'm the product of my dad and this other woman who are two people who have never met and will never meet each other. And it's just like this weird realization, like that, how freaking weird is that? Like, I shouldn't exist. But it is like, it's funny though. It's a funny thing to make jokes about. And there's definitely like a lot of ways to cope with it. But my half sister is, I'll just like, the most important things. My half sister is really, really cool. And I'm so glad that I know her now. And I haven't met her in person yet, but I really want to. and she's expressed like that she'd be open to that as well. Her parents, they did tell them, so it was like a little bit of a different story. But I can't remember, like there was originally something that must have like related to what I was just talking about, but I can't remember. We both are we're both 22 and we're going for the same exact career path, which is kind of insane. I was like saying how I'm like setting myself up for working in marketing, and like that I really want to do nonprofit work, and um she immediately was like, "Oh my God, like you have to be kidding. Like I want to do nonprofit marketing too." Because she had the same thought process of like, this is something I'm good at, is like being creative and persuasive, but not seeing marketing as the most ethical field, and being like, I actually want to do something fulfilling that's gonna do something for the greater good of society. Because I honestly can't imagine myself tolerating a job for the rest of my life that doesn't bring me fulfillment and joy, in the sense that I really think I have to do nonprofit like work. And we both had the same like thing. It's just crazy, crazy. But I haven't met her in person, so I bet a lot of the things we have in common I wouldn't even know. She has ADHD like I do, and she is really funny, and we like a lot of the same music, a lot of the same like, I feel like we kind of have similar like aesthetic tastes. It's weird. Just like things you wouldn't even think of as being genetic, like music. But I swear we have like some of the same favorite artists.
Yeah.
And not just like the mainstream, like more specific than that. But it's been really cool to get to know her a little bit. And yeah.
And now you said the donor, she also has 2 children of her own, correct? Do you
Yes.
know if they are aware of your existence and your factoring into her life?
She has told me that she is like open with her family, and she's told her family. I know that she's told her sister and her husband and her kids at least. So they know that I exist, which is cool or whatever. And I don't think that, because I know that she would be willing to meet me, of course, but I don't think there would be a problem with like her family as well. Like I feel like, I don't know because I don't know them, but
Yeah.
I feel as though they would be open to meeting me. And I don't know like a whole lot about her sons, but they're younger than I am. So how old are they? They're in like early high school, late middle school, that time. They're really cute. I don't know. It's so hard on the spot to like think of things. Oh, this was just a random thing. We have the same smile, and I hated my smile before. I hated it. And literally the first day, my 21st birthday, I saw her picture for the first time, and I was like, that's my smile. Like that is crazy. And I never,
It's like, you stole that.
yeah, I never will see it the same way again. I never will see it the same way.
Yeah.
Because it was the same day. Like I looked in the mirror, I was like, that's crazy. And it made me kind of start to like it, because I saw her pictures and I was like, well, it looks kind of pretty on her. So then like, yeah, but just funny.
Yeah. So now that you've had time to process everything a little bit, it's an infinite amount of processing. It could go on forever. But have you chosen to share these facts about yourself openly beyond your immediate family, or is it something that you kind of hold closely to yourself?
Yeah, they're my closest friends. And I I have a girlfriend, so I am in a relationship. She also knows about it. Um, so yeah, I would be, if anyone like wanted to, I guess there would be no way for me to know it unless I just said it straight out. I was like, if anyone wants to talk, but then it's like, how would they know I'm donor conceived? I'm like probably more open about it than a lot of people. I don't, and maybe part of that is because I was misled. So it's kind of like I just learned this myself. Like, you know, I can't gatekeep something that I've only known for like a year or two. At least that's how I feel, is like um because I was had to go through it in adulthood, um and like how much of a toll that took on me. I feel like the added burden of having to then keep that a secret from all your friends or your relationship partner, whatever, that would just be too much. Like I'd rather be open.
Cool. And then I guess, unless you spark something else in my head here, I have one more question. What have you found to be the most helpful as you've dealt with all of this? Is there like maybe a practice in your life that puts you more at ease with, you know, the more difficult parts of dealing with all of this? Is there anything that you do in your day to day that has softened the blow a little bit?
It it's definitely writing. That's the number one thing I could think of is writing. And I said this, but I wrote a poem that's pretty important to me, that is about being donor conceived. And I also would love to write a book and maybe have it published or self-published, because I like forget that that's an option. Um, and just writing is a really great coping mechanism for me. Um, I like to like write my feelings out, and like I said, there was a whole thing where I finally like put some thoughts to paper. Same day, she messages me. I think that is a sign, if I ever saw one. It's probably like the clearest sign I'll ever get in my life, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and all it is like, yeah, I wrote something down on paper, but at that time, I was not writing like at all for stuff that wasn't for school, because I just couldn't bring myself to. And it was that night that I brought myself to put it down on paper. So weird, so weird. I'll never forget. I'll never forget that. But
That's pretty wild.
yeah.
And I couldn't agree more that writing was by far the one thing that helped the most. Yeah, it just ended up being my go-to thing for therapy. And I think that applies to any other challenges that we face in life, right? It's not just discovering that your identity isn't what you thought it was. Any sort of challenging feelings that come up, writing is a great way to process and to sit with, you know, what's happening on the inside. So any closing thoughts that you have, final feelings or bits of your story that you feel are relevant that maybe we didn't touch on yet?
I guess just speaking to other donor conceived people, I want you to know, if you're a donor conceived person and you're listening to this, that you're not alone. There's a lot of us. And not only that, but you're not alone in your complexity and in your discomfort and your confusion. And I feel like a lot of the times I felt weird for feeling weird, if that makes sense. Like I shouldn't feel uncomfortable with the method of my creation, but really there's nothing wrong with feeling uncomfortable with it. I think it's natural to feel weird about it, at least for a long time. Um, and you are totally and completely valid. Whether you want to contact or be in contact with your donor, or whether you don't know who they are and you have no interest in knowing about them, whatever your story is, you are valid. And that's super important. And that's all I have to say.
I want to give a big thank you to Iliana for sharing your story with us so courageously. To feed off her final thought there, people in the DCP community are all put into positions that we didn't ask for, but we're forced to navigate the consequences, sometimes without the support that we need. And so there's no real playbook to draw from in terms of what's right and what's wrong as we decide how we want to approach dealing with this. It's our choice and no one else's. And stories like Iliana's can give the courage needed for others who are still deciding what their path forward looks like. If you're enjoying these episodes, please consider leaving a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening from. And if you would like to know more of my own personal story, you can read my book titled Inconceivably Connected, A True Story of Shocking DNA Results and Chasing the Unknown. It's available primarily on Amazon and Barnes & Noble, but just give it a Google search and you should find it most anywhere. The production, music, and editing for the Inconceivably Connected podcast were done by me, your host, Nick Ludwig. And if you're donor conceived and would like to tell your story on the show, please email inconceivablyconnected@gmail.com. A quick note on that. There have been several dozen guest submissions since the podcast has launched, but only 3 have come from DCPs identifying as male. I can only speculate as to why that number is so low, but particularly if you're a man and would like to share your story, I would love to hear from you. Thank you all for listening. We will be back again for another episode next week with a brand new guest. See you next time.